Stephen Sondheim in his own words. PM, BBC Radio, 21st of July, 1973.
In your youth, you had the good fortune of having the late Oscar Hammerstein as your guardian and teacher. At what point did you begin to show an interest in his work?
When I was 13, I guess, which is when he took me to Oklahoma. And I'd been somewhat interested in the theater before that, but not really. And it was seeing his work and knowing him that, and therefore wanting to emulate him, that got me seriously interested.
What was the most important lesson you learned from Hammerstein?
To say what you feel as opposed to what other people feel. Not to imitate. The first songs I wrote were in direct imitation of him, and he said, "This isn't the way you think or feel. This is the way I think and feel. And you don't believe any of these things, and say things your own way, and don't be ashamed of saying them your own way."
Who then is the best judge of what you create, yourself, or do you turn to others?
Technically, I'm a better judge. In terms of overall effect, what is being conveyed, it needs a listener. After all, songwriting, playwriting, theater deals in direct contact with an audience, and whether that audience is one person in a living room or 1,500 strangers in the theater, your primary task is to communicate with them, so that a song doesn't exist until the listener is there. I have to play songs for people, usually I play first for a collaborator, that is who's ever doing the libretto, and secondly for the director and maybe other members of the so-called creative staff. And if they all approve, then I think it's ready to, put on a stage.
West Side Story, in a sense, is the musical that really first established your reputation on Broadway and elsewhere. Bernstein's music, your lyrics, were quite electrifying and provocative for their time. Yet now you're quoted as saying that your lyrics were nothing more than, say, a pretentious effort at street poetry.
West Side does not deal with character. Character is the thing that most interests me in the theater, and particularly in musical theater. There are no characters in West Side Story. They're all essentially, because it's a melodrama, they're all essentially one-dimensional people, and therefore there was no room to explore character, and everybody spoke in what we hoped was an effective street poetry style. But it's all fake. Fake in the sense that it's for effect, not for character exploration. Not only that, but I was very young at the time, and technically some of the lyrics bother me a good deal. A song like Tonight really expresses nothing except a lot of pretty words put together. I don't mean that I sat down just to fill up paper. It was just that there's very little you can say about two characters who have just met and exchanged 6 lines of rather elliptic dialogue, and who are nothing more nor less than 2 young lovers. That's how you describe them as characters. They have no characteristics except that they're a young boy and a young girl. So there's not much to write about. I had predicted, and everybody accused me of being kind of
too clever by half?
Too clever by half, right, and neurotic. I kept saying that. Everybody said, "Oh, it's a classic, it's a classic." I said, "No, it's going to date very quickly." And I said, not because of the subject matter, but because of the way it's written, because what lasts in the theater is character. So 10 years later it was revived, and the critics to a man said, "Oh, what a disappointing production of West Side Story has just been done at Lincoln Center." They didn't know why they were disappointed, because they couldn't believe that it was the work that was at fault. Mm-hmm. But to a man, the work was, but it was at fault, and everybody felt it. And it's because it was terribly, terribly dated. And the reason it was dated was that the techniques that had been inventive and brilliant and unusual in 1957 had been absorbed into the theater, and many other people had used them. And so there wasn't that to excite you. So what else would excite you? Well, there's the sheer kinetic energy of the music and some of the energy of the dancing, and that's all. There are 2 lyrics in the show I liked then, and I still like, and that's the first 2 songs, the Jet song and Something's Coming. They have a kind of angry inner drive, a kind of insistence that comes from feeling and passion rather than from an author putting words down on paper.
Years ago, musicals were the source of popular songs, but that clearly is not the situation now. Has the loss of this sort of commercial demand freed the musical at all?
Yes, sir.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?